Hi, this is Billy Gould from Faith No More, and you're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com, and we are here at the NAMM Show 2015 with none other than bassist Billy Gould. How you doing, Billy?
Good. How are you? Great.
All right. Good. It's good to catch up with you. You've been around a while, and you've got quite a story. But I'd like to start from the beginning. Tell me about your musical upbringing. You come from a musical family?
No, I don't. It had to do with, actually, it's stupid, but probably a lot of bass players started this way. I was running around on my bicycle with a couple of my friends, and one of them knew how to play drums, and one of them knew how to play guitar, and they wanted to start a band, but they didn't have a bass player. And it was something I could learn really quickly and be in a band.
Did you know what a bass player was? Because a lot of guys with that story.
I didn't really know what a bass even really sounded like, and I started paying attention because I realized if I wanted to be in a band, I had to learn how to play bass. So I started watching bands and what things the bass player did. So it wasn't like a natural thing right away, but what happened was I started playing with bands right away because everybody needed a bass player, and that was cool. And also I started writing songs right away, and so I learned kind of my own language, and the people I played with kind of taught me a little bit of their language, and that's kind of how I grew up playing.
Well, you mentioned that you were a songwriter also. Did that help get your career going? I mean, how did you go from riding your bike with your friends to learning how to play the bass to becoming falling into a career as a professional musician?
I wanted to do this. This is kind of, I found what I really wanted to do, but it was really hard to find a way to make a living. And I met the drummer from a record store, Faith No More, from an ad on a record store wall, and there was an elective course that was getting taught by a Ghanaian drummer, and his name was C.K. Ladzepko. And he's teaching Ghanaian drums. And my drummer wanted to learn something new, and he started taking these classes, and it kind of blew his mind on an approach to making music. And he started thinking in circular patterns, and he started teaching that to me, like a way of kind of looking at it, where I stopped playing like the bass player that backs up the guitar and propels the drums, this invisible thing that's kind of a glue, and I started thinking like a percussionist, and that was a real big turning point where my drummer and I started doing things where we would play a kind of weird groove, like a circular skip, and then shift gears and reverse it, and we started thinking more in terms of up and down and not linear ways. It's almost kind of like how loop-based recording now is, where people think in loops. We were kind of loop-based writing, and it blew my mind. And that's something I've carried with me today, which, technically speaking, I think I'm definitely not at the top of the class as far as bass players go. But I do things that people wonder how the hell I do them, and it's because of the way my mind approaches what I do. It's not a Western way of looking at it, but it really is cool, and it works in rock and roll. I found a way to where it has a lot of impact, and it really propels a song.
Faith No More. Mm-hmm. How did that come about?
Well, like I met the drummer through an ad in the record store wall, and it was a band that was a little bit formulaic, and that there was a lot of music coming from Great Britain at the time that was kind of called post-punk.
We're talking about what year?
1981.
Okay.
And it was melodic, which was cool. It had new ways of production. Digital reverb were just invented, so it was this kind of spatial, ethereal thing that kind of was still edgy and dark, that appealed to an 18-year-old. And we got to a point where I think that it was a very structured group, and it was too much structure. I split up with a girlfriend at the time. The drummer split up with a girlfriend at the time. We just kind of said, man, let's just make some noise and let's just play. And we just started making this noise, and it had to do with these African skips that our keyboard player came in and started doing this ambient textures over it, and it started having this vibe where we were rehearsing in the rehearsal rooms and people were coming and just hanging out in our room to listen to it. It was almost a early Pink Floyd-y kind of thing. And the more we did it, the more we kind of learned this kind of weird thing we were doing. And it was just some of our parts. Like, our drummer has this weird way he plays. He holds back on the snare drum. I kind of learned how he did and how to fit myself in with that. And it's kind of like really all chemistry. And as we got that chemistry part and we got comfortable with each other, we started creating changes and bridges and things like that. We started writing songs around this weird chemistry we had that became Faith No More. And it was just kind of like, now it's 30 years later, and I mean, we can read each other like a book, and it sounds like music now. But that was really, we went the exact opposite direction. We didn't want to make music. In fact, we were doing a thing where every show was a different performance. We was completely improvised, but not improvised in a way of doing solos and things like that. Improvised in that we were trying to find these really rock hard sledgehammer grooves that didn't change. They were hypnotic and repetitive that took you to a different space. So that's kind of what happened. And these spaces we started combining and they started becoming songs.
Tell me about your equipment, and let's start with your Zahn bass. You've been with Zahn for a long time now.
Long time. I met Joe Zahn at a NAMM show, probably 1990, 91, and he's like, I want to make you a bass. And I was like, man, I'm happy with what I have. And he's like, I can make you, and I can make you happy. And it's like, I like the tone of this. I like how it fits. I don't have to worry about it. And he was like, let me try. So he made me something, and I brought it with me, but it kind of felt like driving a Cadillac, It was a really well-made bass, and I didn't know. And I broke a string at one of our shows, and I played the Zahn. And it was like, blew my mind. Like, that's it. It's the Zahn.
Tell me about your Zahn signature bass.
Signature bass.
It's the Sonus, right?
The same. It's that bass that he built for me back in like 91. It's that exact same bass, and it's got a graphite neck, so it doesn't move. When you set the bridge, that's it. It's it forever. It's got only one knob, and it's a volume knob because I have the pickups exactly voiced how I want them. And for live, I just don't want to fool around with tone controls and stuff. I want my sound, and I want it consistent every night, and I don't want to think about it. This is that exact bass, and what I've done was I've added an amplifier in it that's got a parallel kind of drive circuit that gives you a little more edge that I was getting through my amplifier. But, there's some amps that, this isn't 1991 anymore. Like, power has come a long way, and a lot of really great high-powered amps that are really cool aren't giving me the tone that I used to get with my PV, and this is kind of a way to kind of get that tone back and keep it in the bass and keep it with the product and not have to go through a pedal and go through translation. So that's kind of the deal with my new signature model.
What else is keeping you busy these days, Billy?
Well, Faith No More broke up in like 97, and I started a record label because I wanted to keep working with music because that's what I do. And, being in a band, as everybody knows, isn't like a casual thing to do. It takes a while to grow into, and I just kind of wanted to keep working. A band, when you're a little bit weird, what musicians have to realize is the way you get around survival is you just got to play every show you can. And the radio isn't going to help you. It's not something that sounds like something else that people can grab. So if you're doing something a little bit different, you got to play a lot. And back in the day, we played a lot. We toured for a year and a half on a single tour, and it burned us out, left us shell-shocked, but we had to do it to survive. When we got back together, we decided if we're going to do this, we're going to keep it to 3-week runs, and we're going to keep it civilized, and we're going to keep it human, and we're going to want to do this. Because at the end, man, we didn't want to see each other, And so we've been keeping it that way, and we've been writing, and we've been keeping it really productive, and I think we're coming up with really good stuff.
Last question, Billy. Yeah. What would you be if you weren't a bass player? You can't say a producer, engineer. It's got to be something outside of music.
I really hate to think because basically outside of being a bass player, I've just had horrible minimum wage jobs, and I was really bad at all of them. So by the grace of God, I'm just happy that I am what I am.
Well, you know what? So are we. It's great catching up with you, Billy Gould. Congratulations, and keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep enjoying
Thanks
it.
for your interest. Cool.
Sure. From the 2015 NAMM show, I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.